The call is a challenge. You're stepping into the unknown, which is the scariest thing for a human being to do. But it's worthwhile because it is your personal journey of transformation. And so that supernatural aid can be a person, it can be a symbol, something that appears to you in a dream or a vision or a medicinal plant journey, or the inner wisdom itself. Some people are guided by that inner wisdom, and they know that, okay, I'm meant to do this. This is my calling, right? Then, like you say, that supernatural aid then gets you across the threshold. Now, the threshold is an important part of the hero's journey because it's that final commitment, right? So the calling itself, the resistance to the calling, the finding the mentor, they're just preparation for getting you across the line and finally saying, I commit to this journey of transformation wholeheartedly.
Hello, this is Debra Maldonado.
I'm Dr. Rob.
Welcome to Soul Sessions. We are the founders of Creative Mind, and this is a Jungian coaching podcast. And we are in the middle of our series on the hero's journey and Jung's individuation. And if you missed the previous episode, please check it out because we talked about the overview of everything we're talking about today. And one of the things we did talk about is the 3 stages. And today we'll talk about one, but would you like to review the 3, Rob?
Yeah, and this is from Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey. So the first stage is departure. Second stage is initiation. And the third stage is the return.
And so today we're talking about phase 1, the first phase.
Yeah, the departure, which is one of the most interesting aspects of the work because, well, as you will see, it contains a lot of the preparatory and initial stages of the individuation process, which are really important. If we get these right, then we can have a good journey. If we get these wrong, we mess it up.
Or
That's when
delay
we
it
get into
away,
trouble.
postpone it.
What's that?
Would you postpone it? Is that what happens if you get it wrong?
Yeah, in a way, you always have to go back to the beginning and start the journey over.
So what would be a way to do it wrong? I guess you'll tell us.
Yeah, that's what we're going to try to bring to light.
Okay. So let's start with the call to adventure. And then there's also the refusal of the call, which sort of goes hand in hand in this stage.
Yeah, so the hero is invited into the unknown somehow, into the journey, right? And this can be triggered by a challenge. In other words, something that comes up that challenges you, a threat. We all know those, right? Life is always throwing curveballs at us and things that get very intense and very hairy sometimes. And also, even opportunities can trigger the call.
So it would be a divorce, a breakup. It could be meeting someone new, the opportunity, the refusal. I don't know. I'm not ready. Yeah. Losing a job, getting an opportunity. There also is illness. If you have had an illness, that could, a serious illness sometimes triggers that call to adventure in a way because you're going on something. And then that refusal, it's really this feeling of that you're approaching the unknown because you're like thrown out of the Garden of Eden, you're thrown out of the comfort zone, and there's a tentativeness to want to go back because it's more, even if your life isn't perfect, it's more comfortable than being in the unknown.
Yeah, and the most unknown to us is the unconscious mind. It represents for us the forbidden, the place we should not go from the ego perspective. And this is where a lot of people get it wrong. They think, oh, because I have this fear of the unknown, of the unconscious mind, that means it's evil or bad or that I should stay away from it. It's simply a warning that
Mm.
if you're not ready to enter, you should not enter, and there
Mm.
will be things that stop you from entering. So again, the fear of the unconscious is so misunderstood and so needless. It's more dangerous to not enter your unconscious and explore it. It's more dangerous, and we'll see why.
Well, can I just add that the when we have those events in our life, we have a divorce, we have a breakup, we have a lose a job, we have an illness. We, our default is to look for those external, like, I need to change something in my life. Like, what's my next step? Do I need to find another job, or do I need to just find another partner? But or even the illness, like, I need to go fix this. And what we're saying from a psychological standpoint, like you said, was we need to go inside. We need to go and access, like, how did we get here? And if you don't examine that, and then you just go off and rearrange the furniture in your life to make it fit what you want, it's going to, you're not like, is that, would you say the wrong way to do it? Is that you don't look inward and you just try to move the world, or take action in the world, and you're not really examining or looking at
Yeah.
the unconscious or your shadow first in the first stage, to see, like, what created this in the first place. And I see this with relationships. They people keep repeating those same relationships over and over. They think, if I just find that right person, and they never examine, well, what's in my shadow that created this, or get into the same job that's still that same type of boss, or the same unfulfillment. It's somewhere out there. And I think that's really very powerful, to go inward, and why it's so important to do that.
Yeah, it's almost a tragedy when people succeed at the external game
Mm.
without doing the inner work, because that's where you see the golden handcuffs situation, where somebody becomes very successful at the external game without really doing their inner work, and then they're stuck because they're so locked into that lifestyle, and they're so used to the money and the success, that it's very difficult for them to renounce that. Not,
Well,
not
more
that
than
you have
just
to be
money.
poor or that you have to be unsuccessful, but that you can't be afraid of losing it all. If you're afraid, you're living at the survival level, even though you have all this abundance of material around you. In your core, in your inner life, you're afraid. You're simply defending yourself. You're living in that protective shell of, this is my comfort zone, and if anything happens where I have to leave it, I'll be doomed. And that's the
Mm.
feeling that people have.
Well, I think not money is a great metaphor, because there are a lot of very successful people that are afraid to leave that cushy corporate job. But I think there's another thing I've seen, is people spend years and, lots of money going to school and getting a degree, or becoming a doctor or a lawyer, and they have the title, and it's not even the money, but it's the title, it's the all the education, all their life they worked really hard to get where they are from, and then have that kind of persona, and it's hard to let go of that too.
Mm.
I let go of my medical degree, or let go of my PhD, or my
You're talking about me?
I'm talking about you. No, just in general, like, we see this a lot when, especially, a lot of our students have advanced education.
Yeah.
They were very successful in their chosen early life career, and then they say, that's the problem. I don't want to let go of, because it has some kind of, like, elegance to the title that the community respects, and many times it's the family
Yeah.
that it puts that pressure, like, you're a doctor or you're a lawyer, like, why would you leave that to do something else?
Yeah.
And it just seems crazy to everyone else, but that person buys into that, can buy into that.
Yeah. So one way to mess it up is to not heed the call. And so
Mm,
there'll be a lot of false starts for us,
mm,
for all of us. There'll be
mhm,
false starts, right? Where you know there's something that you have to be doing internally, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, but you can't seem to find thread, the path. And so you go back to the old habits, the old pattern, and you stay there for another bit until something else happens that reminds you, oh, I meant to be doing something bigger, something important for myself, right? Not externally. So this call to adventure, the call. And often for a lot of our students, it's the call to be a coach, to help others, to contribute to society in a much larger way than just focusing on your personal success. And then the refusal, which is the resistance. There will be resistance. In other words, if you don't understand that principle, you think, no, the universe is telling me to stop. That every time I try to do this,
it's a sign.
yeah, something comes up and it blocks my way. They read it as it's a bad omen.
But is that a mistake though? Uh, I mean, I have to, like, I'm just clarifying because I don't see those false starts as mistakes, and that I don't think anyone, just because I have this call to adventure and I'm just going to do it without any resistance. It's almost like the resistance is also part of the process.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. The resistance is there to help us, but it's the misinterpretation
Okay,
that
that's
it's
the
a
mistake.
bad sign, that it's
Yeah.
it's a taboo, right? That I should not do this.
And
And
I got the call.
it will feel like taboo. It will feel like I'm not meant to go there, because the ordinary person is not meant to go there. You have to prepare. You have to have certain things in place, as we'll see, that that kind of protect you as you go into the unconscious. I love Dante's story, as they're heading into the gates of hell, which is the underworld. It says there's a sign up there that says, um, "Abandon all hope, you who enter here." Right. In other words, if it's going to feel that way, it's going to feel like I'm going into this journey, and it's almost impossible for me to achieve. What am I
And that's the
doing?
refuse. That's why we have the refusal.
Yeah.
And the reason is the person we are when we get the call has not evolved to the hero yet. We haven't evolved, so we're in the ego, and we it's almost like blinders. We can't see our possibility yet. So it's almost like a natural
Absolutely.
state. Like, people will tell you, oh, if you knew you can do anything, what would you do? And it's like, yeah, I could do this and that. But it's more than just a cheerleader motivating you. You have to go through that refusal and then face what's the resistance.
That's right.
And I was going to say earlier that I remember when I got laid off from my corporate job, and I was thinking about starting my own business, becoming a hypnotherapist initially. I refused the call, and I went and I got another job, and I worked at that job. And then 2 years later, a year and a half later, I was like, okay, I really need to go now. And I got laid off from that job, and then I did it. But I don't think there was anything wrong with that. I think I learned a lot, and I wish I could go back and undo it. But I think it's to not beat yourself up if you do that, but understand it. It's very reasonable and natural to feel afraid and feel that it's okay, like almost like it's normal to feel that fear and go back, but it's not going to lead to you to be happy. And that's kind of the point I'm trying to make, is that it's not a mistake. The only mistake is that you think that there's some kind of sign that you shouldn't do it. It's just understanding that your mind will resist because you aren't there yet. And so you become that person through the process of individuation.
Yeah, and it has a lot of benefits. The resistance actually benefits us, and one of the
Mm-hmm.
first ones is that it it prepares us for the challenges
Mm-hmm.
by saying, beware.
Are you sure?
Proceed, yes, proceed with caution. In other words, don't be reckless. Don't blindly go into it thinking that this is going to be easy, or this is going to be fun, or this is just going to come naturally.
Everything's going to like fall into place.
Right. That you're going to require a mentor, a guide, just like climbing a mountain. If you have somebody that is guiding you, that's the right way to do it, right? You're ensuring that, or at least increasing the likelihood that you'll reach the top.
And the guide is there to really help you work with that refusal, help you, on those initial stages, remind you of what's possible. And many times, if they're a mentor, they've done what you've done before. They left the corporate world. They've done, survived the illness that you had, or they worked with people on that illness. And there's someone there that could say it's all going to work out. And it's like almost because we're not there yet, we need a mentor who's lived through it and almost on the other side to pull us through a little bit, to kind of have a little string that says, it's okay. The water's warm. It's going to be all right. And that's really, we would come to that crossing the threshold, because the guide is almost like the bridge that takes you across the threshold of the scary waters of the unknown and the unconscious.
Yes.
And of course, our Jungian coaches work with the shadow and the unconscious. So they're great mentors to help transition into that, who you become, and whatever it is, whatever that transition is.
Yes. And if there's one thing that's missing in today's societal structures, are these mentors. Well, a lot of people talk about the mentor as a business mentor. Yeah, that's fine. That's great. They're going to help you figure out your business and how to make money and all that stuff. But we need mentors that are skilled in the inner work.
The spiritual mentor, in a way.
That's right. That can guide people psychologically, emotionally, spiritually through the transformation. Because if you only work at the external level,
there was always that the spiritual mentor, like the guru or the tribe, was there as the guide for a lot of people and different cultures.
Ideally, right? Even then, it's difficult for people. Again, this is a challenge that you're accepting. The call is a challenge. You're stepping into the unknown, which is the scariest thing for a human being to do. But it's worthwhile because it is your personal journey of transformation. And so that supernatural aid can be a person, it can be a symbol, something that appears to you in a dream or a vision, or a medicinal plant journey, or the inner wisdom itself. Some people are guided by that inner wisdom, and they know that, okay, I'm meant to do this. This is my calling, right? Then, like you say, that supernatural aid then gets you across the threshold. Now, the threshold is an important part of the hero's journey, because it's that final commitment, right? So the calling itself, the resistance to the calling, the finding the mentor, they're just preparation for getting you across the line and finally saying, I commit to this journey of transformation wholeheartedly.
That's just the beginning, when you can make that commitment.
That's right. But
and then you have to continue to commit to the journey along the way. There will be resistance along the way. And that's
because
part of the journey.
Yeah, think of what is happening. You're leaving the familiar. And Jung says there's some guilt around this, because you're leaving the people that sustain you, and the culture and the tribe that sustained you and brought you up.
The family too. Sometimes you evolve beyond, and you feel like I don't fit in with them anymore.
Yes. Now, remember, this is all symbolic. It doesn't mean you're rejecting your culture and your family. It simply means you have to find your footing for yourself to become your own person.
Would you say we're not rejecting it, but we're acknowledging that's not all who we are?
That's a good
that way. It could still be a part of our past, but we are much more than that. Before it was a definition of our persona, and now we're willing to step into a larger version of ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's another thing about the guide, because that's what the guide represents. It's like, I've been the ordinary person. I crossed the threshold, and they can be, a mentor can be, that kind of a image. If you don't have one for yourself, of something, what's possible for you.
Yeah. So crossing the threshold then is one of the big steps in the hero's journey, as well as the individuation process. It is the symbolic and psychological transition into becoming a seeker, committing to your path and saying, I'm off to see the wizard, right?
Mm. And crossing the threshold, I think, when we think about our coach training and people that have wanted to change careers and they want to get some type of training, whether they will go to college or go to coach training or some kind of other certification, the threshold is not, the training itself is not really the threshold. The threshold is when the training is the comfort zone. Still, there's still resistance. The threshold is when you actually step out and activate what you were trained in. So crossing the threshold is like, oh, I signed up for a program, now I cross the threshold. No, it's when you decide, I'm going to be public about my journey, and I'm going to be this and step into this new role. So that's a very good distinction of where the threshold is. It's not just signing up for something and paying for a training and thinking, okay, I've crossed the threshold. That's not, doesn't come till later on. So again, all that initiation is that training and working with a mentor and getting prepared for that crossing over.
Then you enter the belly of the whale.
I just saw a video of a guy got swallowed, a kayaker swallowed by a whale. That happens frequently. And I was like, oh, that's very metaphorical.
Yeah.
And why the belly of the whale? Why is that symbolic?
Yeah, so there's a lot of myths of a dragon, a serpent, a whale swallowing the initiate, and it represents a second gestational period. Just like when you're in your mother's womb, you're being cooked, you're being processed. It's a gestation. In other words, you're going to have to undergo a second birth.
So rebirth is another archetype, right?
Yes. But first you have to go a death, of course, a death of the old self. In other words, this is where in many traditional cultures, when the initiate would shave their head to represent, I'm no longer the old person with the old ideas. They would change their clothes, wear something different, something that represents
change their name
that
even.
They're no longer the persona given to them by the society. Now they're in this transitional morphic state.
And so this is the almost like this part, the belly of the whale, is where we come to terms maybe with our shadow, and we start to let go of that hardened, conditioned persona.
This is the dark night of the soul, the confrontation with the unconscious, as Jung would say, the meeting with the shadow, where you're going to have it out. Essentially, you're going to have to face your fears. In the psychological work, what we see is this confrontation with the fears. That okay, what am I running from? If indeed I've had this internal conflict all my life, let's have it out. What's the worst that could happen if it becomes true? And that having it out with, that showdown with the shadow, what it does, it liberates you from running from always fearing something will be exposed about you, or that something will be revealed that will make you undesirable to others, and that will reject you.
Well, like a lot of people that want to do like purpose work, like coaching or thought leadership, they have this imposter syndrome, and they're so afraid of what other people think or what they're going to say, and did they have the authority? And this is really a time to come to terms with all that. At that point, I actually think it's a very good question when that comes up to ask. So you don't take yourself too seriously, and you're like have an inflated ego thinking I have this title now, so I'm going to go off and, save the world. And it's a kind of an ego state. So it's good to face those things, the imposter syndrome, the doubts, the insecurities, the questioning if you're capable, or all these questions are so rich for our growth, and we need to go through those questions. I think some people think that there's something wrong with them, or they're not confident enough because they have these questions, but it's really a natural part of our evolution, going from this old self into this new identity. And when we change careers, I think it's the typical identity shift. We have to really let go of the old persona that was in that old career and step into something else.
Yeah. And it is shedding a lot of the paraphernalia of the old persona, like you said, the degrees and the titles and the kind of the status that you've had as persona. It doesn't mean you're rejecting them again. It doesn't mean you can't have those things or enjoy them. It simply means that you're not identifying and not using those as your way of defining yourself. That part has to die. And symbolically, that's the death of the old self in the birth, or the potential now of a new person, a new being, a new awareness being born. And that the belly of the whale represents that gestational period of transformation, of really being cooked, getting into hot water, and being regestated and being reborn again. Right? So rebirth is often in spiritual traditions, right, a very important passage. Baptism, initiation.
And even our second life, like it's our second life that we get at midlife. We have a second life. We have our first life that we're conditioned to be, and now we have the second life. We're reborn into who we want to become. And I think that's a beautiful process. But the dark night, it like you said, it's hard to let go, because it's given us, it's got us here, right? It kept us alive. The people we love, the friendships, the colleagues at work, the people that we love, leaving that behind to create something new, has that push and pull with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think just thinking about it as risking losing those things, right? And that you're willing to risk losing those things because you're setting the priority correctly, that finding yourself is the priority for yourself. That's the commitment to your inner work.
One thing I think I've seen a lot is that people are sometimes so comfortable with their insecurities, and that becomes like, it's easier for me to just be insecure and doubt myself, because we're so used to it, that to step into someone with courage and with strength and with possibility and like confidence, that is foreign to us. So even though we want it, our ego refuses it because it's so familiar. And so that's the battle. A lot of times we think facing the shadows about looking all the negative, but most of the negative is in our ego, like the things that we don't want, the negative thoughts, the negative beliefs. We're already conscious of those. It's the profound possibility and power that we have within us that we really fear, having that power in our life, and having the power to choose versus being just unconsciously led by the circumstances of life.
That's
and the
right.
hero's journey is about redefining, the landscape of your life.
So these 5 stages comprise what Campbell called the departure phase. So you have the call to adventure, the refusal of the call when you're checking out, the supernatural aid or mentor or guide, the crossing of the first threshold. You're committed to the path, and entering the belly of the beast.
And next week we'll continue with the initiation, which is the next stage. And the first part of that is the road of trials. So, it's interesting. It sounds like everyone wants to live their purpose and live their dreams. And if we understand that there's going to be obstacles along the way, and how we can look at them in a psychological way and not be afraid of them, and understand them, and embrace them and accept them as opportunities, we can create the life we really want.
Absolutely. That's what
So
we're here for.
Yeah. Yes, that's exactly what we're here for. We weren't here to pay our bills and die. That's what someone said. We're here to do so much more, to live our soul's purpose and express our potential, and leave the world a better place, hopefully, than we found it.
Absolutely. All right.
All right. Well,
we'll see you next week.
Yes. See you next week. And we'll talk about initiation. Take care, everyone. Have a great day.